Job design for me has to be designed systematically, and the best method that I've come across to do this is systems thinking. So I will be talking to you about the application of systems thinking and job design, and hopefully we can have a bit of a time for discussion about that as well. So the first time I came across systems thinking was when I went to go and have a look at a change piece of work that was going on in the life division in Aviva, where I was working at the time in the general insurance as the HR director there. And this is what somebody said to me who was working on the front line. She said, "I've worked here for 30 years and for the first time I feel like I am somebody." And I can remember thinking, I am so keen to understand what it is that makes you feel so special, recognised and significant. And it was essentially her job design. So I thought, I don't really want to work in any other way. This is absolutely tremendous. So I looked more closely into what was happening and realised that this division had what was known as a systems thinking intervention into the way the work worked and the jobs were designed. So if I explain for a moment what is systems thinking. So systems thinking is a way of looking at the organisation as a whole in its component moving parts, rather than the typical linear cause and effect that you typically see when looking at problems or issues with organisation design. So the idea with systems thinking is that you look at the whole of the organisation and the way things integrate, recognising that you do something in one part of an organisation, it will affect another part, not necessarily in a linear way. So you have to really understand and get knowledge about the impact of change. So this here is a relatively simple model to explain how you can use systems thinking to actually solve problems, make change happen, and design work well. And it was roughly this approach that I'd first seen used in Aviva. So the 4D intervention model. So it has 4 main steps. The first is that you diagnose what's actually going on. So you get data from metrics, from performance data, but also from observation. So really being close to what's happening in terms of the customer. So at the end of that, you understand the opportunity for improvement. You understand the extent to which the roles are designed to deliver what the customer is looking for. And you then take that data and you work out the perfect workflow and the design of the roles to support that workflow, and you check, does it work? So you experiment on a really quite a small scale. You then deploy that to the wider areas once you know that you have fantastic role design and you have a transformed customer experience. And then that gives you your new operating model. So not only are you improving service, but you're taking out waste, duplication, and the sort of hassle that demoralizes people. So you then get into the final part of the model where you embed the change and you put in measures and you get the leaders to look at the design of work differently from an outside-in perspective. So why is this so important in the engagement journey? Well, I think one of the main reasons why it's a really great solution for organisations. You're not actually forcing a choice about outcomes. So, you know, sometimes you have this discussion, well, if we do this change programme, it's going to demoralise people. If we make these changes, people will be upset. And so actually, it doesn't force those choices. You, as an outcome, you get happy customers, you get a more profitable business, and you get highly motivated employees. So, what's not to like? And why indeed then does job design specifically matter so much in this engagement journey? Well, if you design jobs that empower staff to do the right thing by the customer, they end up loving work. And we all know that people come to work to do a good job, that when people give great service, that in itself is motivating. You almost don't need recognition schemes because spontaneous recognition comes from the great service and the response to that great service. So design jobs around service and you create very motivating work. And also by designing work that removes hassle, duplication, delay, you're eliminating the activity that adds no value to the customer, but you're also taking away the hassle and the barriers that demoralize your people. So I do have a video case study to bring this to life. So if we watch this and then maybe have a discussion. I do apologise, I'm appearing in it. By studying in the first place what really mattered to customers, we worked out that at that first point of contact, our people needed to be expert as possible and know the answers to a lot of questions that the customers would ring up with.
I mean, if you imagine you ring in, you've got a problem, you want to speak to someone, you want to sort the problem there and then, instead of getting told, you know, unfortunately I can't help you over the phone, you're going to have to wait a couple of days or maybe even a week before you can speak to the person that can actually help you. So yeah, it was very frustrating for them.
When I first started out, it almost felt like a bit of a call centre sort of role really. We were providing backup support for our surveyors.
They're trying to find out you know, what's going on with the claim, how long it's going to take. I've received, for example, a drainage report. I don't really understand what it means. They want us to explain it to them so they can have peace of mind, understanding that what we're doing is the correct thing.
My main role was to identify individuals' training needs and devise a programme to increase their knowledge on construction. So I visited the offices and I spoke to about 15 of my colleagues who were subsidence advisors who answered the phone calls and addressed insured queries when they received a schedule of works. And from that I was able to devise a training programme.
This sort of training, which is actually highly technical, creates experts out of people who didn't ever believe they could be expert. So they become really confident and their potential gets released and they grow as individuals.
So we were basically starting from basic construction, from literally how a property is built, the materials that are used, common building terms such as pointing, brick stitching, breeze blocks. This is the kind of terms that we take for granted that individuals will know. But from my training and from my speaking to colleagues, it was quite clear that this is an area we needed development on. So I put a presentation together with photographs. I also used clips from YouTube to show practical application of plastering, lava and plaster ceilings, brick stitching, heli-fix ties, and these are all common terms that are used, but there's nothing better than actually seeing a video and actually seeing the actual item being installed or applied.
I think they just gave us power. They kind of just gave us the ability to be able to read reports, for example, drainage reports, the actual technical report, understanding subsidence and how it works, understanding what a monitoring report is and what certain things mean. It just made us be able to explain it to the to the customer a lot better, and it gave us that power to be able to help there and then.
The training really made them interested in their job role now, where before they just see themselves as passing on messages. Now they actually see their role of how important their actual role is, and some of them want to actually take a professional qualification in surveying now. The
atmosphere is a lot more lively now. I feel like people are a lot happier because they feel a sense of pride doing the job.
Prior to the change that Crawford has undergone, I would say that we would be able to deal with roughly 20% of the incoming calls that we used to receive. Based on the upskilling that we've had, I would say that it's in the 90s, 90% really. It's really made a massive difference to what we do.
Okay, so hopefully that was clear then, that the job was designed on the basis of analysis to understand what it is exactly that the customer wanted. Instead of handing off to so-called experts, the frontline staff were trained in what mattered to the customer, and that increased their job satisfaction and their role was designed, therefore, to deliver exactly what the customer wanted. And you saw the impact on motivation. Any questions on that? Hopefully it's kind of illustrated in reality what actually can happen with great job design. Okay, so another example, perhaps closer to many of your hearts in the audience, is the HR Shared Service Centre. This was a situation where the service was quoted as a major failing. There were very poor response rates to customers and backlogs in cases. This was a government outsourced services provider. So all the contracts, so hospitals, prisons, schools, local authorities, would actually use the HR Service Centre. They were all complaining, they were all very frustrated with the service centre. So the 4D methodology that I talked about before was applied to the service centre. So the first step was diagnosing, getting the data, the analysis, in order to get a clear, shared view on the key requirements for service delivery. And this diagnosis isn't done to people, so the people doing the work actually get involved in doing the diagnosis for themselves. So again, that sort of empowerment comes through. And then with the people who do the work and with the analysis, then the new roles were designed so that the right type of advice was given at the right time. So again, much like the previous example in the video, by working out what was the high frequency demand onto the HR Shared Service Centre and training the people who took those calls and queries to deal with them first point of contact, they then found they were giving great service, the backlog disappeared, they got spontaneous recognition, people were absolutely delighted with the outcome. So all then teams were engaged in that new job design and their whole morale transformed and the whole service transformed. And what's more is the leaders then and the people who did the work were able to continually improve because they'd got that methodology. I can remember an example where a prison, for example, would call the service centre. They only had a short space of time in which they could contact a service centre because they didn't have Wi-Fi and mobile access in a prison was very difficult. So a prison officer would call, and if they didn't get an answer then and there, it was a very big problem to them. HR Service Centre people never intended to give bad service, they were just following the system. But there was a lot of antagonism around that. When the staff realised the conditions that the prison officers were working in, they were really quite upset. It's like they never wanted to do this, they never wanted to cause that problem, they only want to help. So designing the job so that they can help, first point of contact straight away, you can imagine the effect on the motivation of the staff and the response of the prison officers was extremely favourable. So in this HR shared service, the case resolution getting resolved, so if somebody contacts the HR Service Centre with a case and getting it resolved within 3 days from the point of contact, it was only 19% when the exercise started, and by the end of the exercise it was over half. So there was an 80% reduction in backlogs, they disappeared sort of very quickly. And you see the impact on staff engagement in the survey, up from 50 to 85, and capacity gains of 30%. So that meant they didn't have to bring in temporary staff, and actually it gave people the scope to do the work better and to innovate and improve. And what's interesting, people began to shine. So perhaps an unintended consequence of great job design is that people's potential gets released and they get promoted. So we were absolutely stunned that actually 50% of the team involved in the redesign all got promoted into leadership, change leadership roles, senior HR business partners and so on. So a tremendously motivating experience all round. So I guess for me, I've been in the game of HR far too long to mention how many years, but it's actually more than 30. And I have never seen a methodology that really makes such a profound transformation in such a short space of time, or that truly empowers people to make change for themselves. And at the heart of it is the creation of great job design.